Hi, I'm Vijay. I would like to discuss about the GRE pattern and scoring. The revised GRE was introduced from August 2011. Pattern, durations and scoring all have changed, but the major fundamental change is that the previous pattern was more of memory and less of reasoning, whereas in the new pattern there's a major emphasis on reasoning. For example, in the previous paper pattern, if one memorizes word list and if they are thorough in formulae, then one can be assured of decent score. However, in new pattern, one needs to have a fundamental understanding on basic concepts and also on its applications to do well. Pattern. In analytical writing assessment, the major focus is on critical thinking and on analytical writing skills. The average analytical writing assessment score across the world is 4. I have observed that in the Indian context, average score is 3 or 3.5. In my opinion, if student practices and prepares well, then they should end up with a score of 4 or 4.5. Verbal and quantitative reasoning comprises of two sections. In verbal reasoning, you would get 20 questions and the time duration is 30 minutes each. Whereas in the quantitative reasoning, you get 20 questions and the time duration is 35 minutes each. A score of 165 would put you in top 5 percentile, and that would in turn get you in top universities like Harvard, MIT and Stanford. A score of 160 would put you in top 20 percentile across the world and should help you to get into good universities. However, I have observed that in the Indian context, majority of the students, they do well in quantitative reasoning. I have observed students getting 165 to 170 in quantitative reasoning, but however, Indian students struggle in verbal reasoning. A score of 150 to 155 is considered to be a good score in verbal reasoning for Indian students. There is also an experimental section which could either be verbal or quantitative. We'll discuss about that in detail in the next slide. There are two possible sequences for the new GRE. In both the sequences, you will start with analytical writing assessment. In the first sequence, you may start with verbal reasoning. However, here you observe that there are 3 verbal reasoning. Out of the 3 verbal reasoning, one of them is an experimental section. You don't know as to which section is an experimental section, so please do well in all the section. The other possibility would start with quantitative reasoning, and likewise here you observe that there are 3 quantitative reasoning and one of the 3 quantitative reasoning is an experimental section. So please do well in all the sections as you don't know which one is an experimental section. The new GRE is a section level adaptive. In section level adaptive, the section 1 remains the same for all the students. If your performance is good in section 1, then you would get difficult questions in section 2. Similarly, if your performance is poor in section 1, then you would get easy questions in next section. However, the incentives to do well in first section and in turn getting difficult questions in section 2 followed by good performance in both the sections will reward you with a very high score. Please watch our upcoming videos on various question types and on the preparation strategy. Thank you for watching the video.